heavy side. Otherwise, elsewhere, plenty of fine and dry weather to end Sunday. Now, as we go through Sunday evening and overnight, those showers across the north will sink their way southward, just affecting parts of Wales. Then we'll see the return of low cloud. Could be thick enough in places for some patchy drizzle. And further towards the west, that's where we'll hold on to clearer skies, perhaps some mist and fog patches developing. Otherwise, similar temperatures to previous nights, ranging from 6 to 10 degrees. So as we start Monday morning, it's a bit of a messy picture. There'll be some showers first thing across parts of Wales, and then cloud gradually break up to reveal more sunny spells, but that will also allow some showers to break out across northern parts of England in particular. They could be on the heavy side, cooler now out towards the west, with highs coming up at 21 or 22 in the south. Bye-bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Someone is going to win the biggest prize package to date, and that someone could be you, driving away in this Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It has plenty of room for your family of 4, comes complete with kitchen, bathroom and all the space you'll need for life on the road. Plus, we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No, because you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. Edmund Spencer wrote, among the changing months, May stands confessed the sweetest and in fairest colours dressed. It's a pleasure to be back on Sunday with Michael Portillo for my first programme of this month. If the local election results were repeated at a general election, Labour would be massacred across northern and middle England by reform. How can the governing party best fight back, or must it simply fight itself? I'll ask my panel. The United Kingdom and the European Union are to convene tomorrow at a summit meeting. What will they discuss? And will the result be a loosening of Brexit? 40 years ago, the British rock band Dire Straits released their fifth album, Brothers in Arms, on compact disc. We will discuss the rise and fall of the CD. And this week, experts declared that what was once believed to be a copy of the Magna Carta, bought by Harvard University for $27.50 in 1946, is actually genuine. Historian Tony McMahon will join me to reflect on the significance of that find. But first, your latest news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Michael, thank you very much and good morning. The top stories. Pope Leo is being formally inaugurated as pontiff at a mass in St Peter's Square. The Pope greeted crowds of faithful as he headed to the Vatican in the Pope-mobile, marking the first time he's travelled in the vehicle since his election. World leaders, including US Vice President J.D. Vance and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, are among the congregation there. Pope Leo delivered his first Mass on the 8th of May, shortly after a conclave elected him as the new Pope, using the service to call for unity in the Catholic Church and an end to war. The government says it's working right up to the wire to secure a new deal with Europe ahead of a summit with EU leaders next week. The deal could grant the UK access to a major EU defence fund, as well as lower household bills and a youth mobility scheme. There are some concerns this would mean a return to freedom of movement, but Cabinet Office Minister Nick Thomas-Symonds told Camilla Tominey that is not the case.
Firstly, we will not go back to freedom of movement. And secondly, anything has to be consistent with the government's approach in the migration white paper last week to reduce the level of net migration. The level of net migration has been too high. That's what people have been telling us on the doorsteps. It quadrupled between 2019 and 2023 to just under 1 million. This government is committed to bringing the net migration figure down, and that's exactly what we will do.
Elsewhere, 2 people have been killed, 19 others injured after a Mexican Navy ship crashed into New York City's Brooklyn Bridge. Police said the training ship, with 277 people on board, lost power last night as the captain was manoeuvring the vessel. Footage online shows the ship's towering mast clip the bridge as it passed under the structure. Crew members were standing on the mast as they snapped and fell to the deck, according to authorities. The New York City mayor confirmed on X that 2 people had died and 2 of the 19 injured were in a critical condition. Brooklyn Bridge didn't suffer any major damage and was reopened after an inspection. Now, at least 100 people have been killed in Israeli strikes on Gaza overnight and into this morning, according to the Gaza's health ministry. Women and children were reportedly among the dead there as Israel launches an escalation of its war in Gaza to ramp up pressure on terror group Hamas to agree to a temporary ceasefire. The Israeli military had no immediate comment on the latest strikes. It comes as peace talks between Israel and Hamas take place in Qatar this weekend. And finally, it was a night to remember at the 69th Eurovision Song Contest in Switzerland, but not quite for the UK's entry.
The hell does
Remember Monday placed 19th, receiving nil points from the public vote. Austria and Israel went head-to-head, but ultimately it was Austria who won their 3rd Eurovision with musician JJ's techno-opera song, Wasted Love. Well, Israel's Yuval Raphael, who survived the attacks on the 7th of October in 2023, was the runner-up with the piano ballad New Day Will Rise, performed in Hebrew, French and English. The singer was left shaken and upset after 2 pro-Palestinian protesters rushed towards her during her grand final performance. Organisers confirmed a backstage crew member was hit with paint but wasn't hurt. Those are the latest headlines. For now, it's back to Michael Portillo.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana. And as mentioned there in the bulletin, the Pope's inaugural Mass is taking place in Vatican City, where tens of thousands of well-wishers have gathered for Pope Leo XIV's inaugural Mass at the Vatican. This sees him formally take up his role as leader of the world's Catholic Church. If you want to keep up to date with all the latest on the Pope's inauguration Mass, you can scan the QR code on your screen now, or you can head to GBN2 on YouTube. According to projections by the polling firm Electoral Calculus, in the areas that voted on the 1st of May in local elections, if the pattern of voting were repeated in a general election, Labour would lose 75 out of 78 seats, 59 of them passing to Reform. How should Labour respond? Many of its activists demand that it should restore the winter fuel payments to pensioners and abandon reforms on social security. Others, apparently including the Prime Minister, think that the answer is to sound tough on immigration. Which way should Labour turn now that Reform has turned on it? Joining me now is the pollster and founder of Merlin Strategy, Scarlett Maguire, former Director of Communications at Number 10, Giles Kenningham, and political commentator Matthew Stadlen. Scarlett, first of all, can you just brief us on these extrapolations that have been made from the local elections to a general election? How seriously should we take them?
I don't like extrapolating local election results onto a general election, but I do think that we should take the local election results very seriously. Last year, actually, the local election results, the extrapolation that happened of them, which not seat counts, but of the projected national vote, was a more accurate prediction than the polls at the time for what was going to happen in the general election. So I do think we should take them seriously, especially as they actually told us what we already knew. Yes, Reform may be doing better than polls had suggested before, but what we knew from the general election was that the public were fed up with the two main parties. Indeed, they recorded their lowest joint share of a vote in the general election since the two parties sort of properly came into existence. And we saw those trends continue. So, no, I think we should take the elections very seriously. Not sure about seat extrapolations, but no, I think it's certainly a warning sign to Labour from Reform.
At the general election, it was the Conservatives who suffered badly from Reform. But now the evidence is that Labour will suffer very badly as well. By the way, the Conservatives in this extrapolation also continue to suffer.
Yes, Conservatives are continuing to suffer, and I'd say that Conservatives are closer to death's door than Labour, but it's looking bad for both parties. In Labour-held wards and Conservative-held wards, both parties lost about the same amount of votes to Reform. So, no, Reform were equally hurting both at this election. And I think the reason why it matters for Labour is that, as far as I see it, Labour have been struggling keeping together a fantastically difficult coalition to keep together for a long time now, especially since Brexit, with its working-class heartlands and so-called Red Wall and very liberal urban voters as well. That is very hard to keep together. In 2019, there were talks that the party might even be close to its own extinction event when they were reduced to just 200 MPs because they were really struggling to hold that coalition together, and Boris Johnson managed to take a chunk of it. I think Labour never properly addressed that. So, yes, they de-Corbyned, which was and they showed that they had changed. But I think the missing part of the puzzle is they never addressed who they were for and what they were governing for. And I think now that's why things are unravelling quite so fast for them.
Very interesting. Matt, do you want to pick it up from there? So it is a coalition, the Labour Party. It seems to be two pretty strong and different factions. Which way should they be going? Should they be undoing the things that they did in the name of fiscal austerity? Should they be trying to sound more like Reform on immigration?
I think it is fascinating that we're having this conversation at all, because it's 4 years away from when we expect a general election to be. And that, I think, shows how difficult it is to be a governing party at the moment, how difficult it is to be a Prime Minister. Fascinating, by the way, that Scarlett talked about the decarbonisation of the Labour Party as a means to success for Labour. And it's absolutely true. Starmer did effectively decarbonise the Labour Party, but Starmer's Labour Party won fewer votes than Corbyn's Labour Party did in both 2017 and 2019. I think Labour is more vulnerable to the left, not necessarily within the parliamentary party, but in the electorate than I had thought it was. And a big issue there may be immigration. It's certainly vulnerable on the right. How does it try to show that it is listening to voters at the same time as not losing more core supporters, because I'm sure that some Corbynites would not have turned out for Labour last time round. It's a really difficult position. The first thing I would do, and I do not envy being a strategist within the Starmer team, is not necessarily to reverse the whole thing on the winter fuel allowance, but certainly to raise the threshold. It is essential that this Labour Party shows itself, at the very least, to be competent. Because if it wants to fight off Nigel Farage, that is, to my mind, essential. I think there are still more than enough people in this country who do not want and who fear a Farage prime ministership. But in order for Labour to fight him off, the very least we can expect from them is competence. And I think that particular policy, both from a policy point of view, because it really affected people, and from a political point of view, was incompetent.
And what should Labour do about immigration? Are you happy with what Keir Starmer's saying?
Undoubtedly. I mean, I didn't like the language last week, but let's not overly focus on the language. Well, he would, I'm sure, say it wasn't a deliberate quotation. I didn't like the language.
That would be incompetent if it wasn't.
Well, indeed. I think it is absolutely critical that Labour does reduce net migration. Of course it is, because I think a vast majority of the population think that the net migration figures of recent years are simply too high. And it would be unbelievably tin-eared not to listen to that. And you can make the case for lower migration without slandering the millions and millions of us in this country who are either immigrants ourselves or the descendants of immigrants. We don't have to have this conversation in a toxic manner. It is, by definition, a question of public policy, the levels of migration. Let's have a sensible conversation about it. And yes, I think Starmer has to find a way of getting those figures down.
Giles, it struck me that much of the commentary that I read was saying that, you know, politicians always tell us that they're going to reduce immigration. They never do. By the way, that's going to be the subject of our second discussion. So I just wondered, you know, it seems to me that Starmer could probably say almost anything and people wouldn't believe him on immigration, which made me wonder whether actually, you know, doing something about the things that worry the left might be a better policy for him.
Well, I don't think actually solving immigration is a silver bullet for them. Clearly, they do have to get it under control, but people won't vote for them if they can't get a GP's appointment, they can't buy a house. And I think both Scarlett and Matt have touched upon there is an absence of a narrative of an overall story for Starmer and Labour. What do they stand for? We know what they're against, but not really what they're for. We see a shopping list of different things. And you see them now trying to put some definition going forward. I would say that not all is lost for Labour because, as Matt said, we are 4 years out from a general election. You know, the turnout is traditionally low at local elections. And also, obviously now for reform, they've got to deliver. You can't govern on a slogan. They now have to own a few things. So let's see how they do.
But let's take the two halves of the proposition. Pensioners have been terribly offended.
Yeah.
So if they were to reverse that policy, or partially reverse that policy, is there any chance they would get pensioners back?
I think they have to, and this is the thing they've shown to have.
You think they have to reverse that policy?
They've shown to have a tin ear, and it's dividing the party, and people don't vote for divided parties. They have to take the political hit and move on. And actually, overall, I don't actually think it raises, in the grander scheme of things, that much money for the Treasury. So, yeah, I think they need to take the hit.
And on the immigration, I'm slightly puzzled because although I didn't find very credible what Keir Starmer was saying last week, at least what he was saying last week was about controlling immigration, whereas what he's saying vis-à-vis tomorrow's summit is about increasing immigration. We're going to have more young people coming from Europe into this country. It seems a strange moment to make that announcement.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are labour shortages, aren't there, in certain sectors, certainly in hospitality, where you can make a strong argument for immigration. But I think on the Europe stuff, it is nuanced. I think there is a case to say that, you know, if you are going to solve immigration, it does require closer working with France, Greece, Italy, smashing the criminal gangs, and you're not going to sort it overnight. Too much of what Rishi did was raise the salience of an issue without a proper solution. So, but as I said, solve that, then you have to sort out the NHS, sort out the housing crisis as well.
And there's no good...
Scarlett, may I just ask Scarlett, is there any evidence that people think that Nigel Farage has the answers to these questions, or is he simply not the other two parties?
I think there's a sense that he might do, but crucially, yes, I think his main appeal is that he's not the main two parties. I was on a phone-in on 5 Live the morning after the local election results, and they were appealing for people who'd voted Reform in Runcorn and Helsby to phone in and tell them why. There was a Conservative politician who was on before me who said, don't worry, Reform's just a protest vote. We've got something credible to offer, so everything's going to be fine. And what really struck me was there was then a succession of people who'd voted Reform who said, yes, it is a protest vote. I am protesting and will continue to do so. And so, yes, I think it is just the sense that they are so fed up with other politicians that he looks different enough and that they might as well give him a go. I'm not even sure how high their expectations are. I think very high amongst the base, but amongst quite a lot of people voting for them, they just want to register that they've had enough.
Matt, what were you going to interject?
I was just going to build on what you were saying, actually, which is that there's no good in bringing immigration figures down if it then makes us poorer. That's the problem. So you have to bring immigration down in a way that doesn't make us poorer, because otherwise all bets are off ahead of the next election.
One thing I would say is that on Keir's speech, I think he's now ended up with the worst of all worlds. So I think Reform voters didn't believe him. He's now even more underwater than he was with them before. He's on -94, which is extraordinary. And Labour voters, he's now net negative with Labour voters even. So it looks like he's, I think he played that probably quite badly.
We'll be back afterwards. We'll be back afternoon. For the moment, thanks to Scarlett Maguire, Giles Kenningham and Matt Stadland. They will return at noon to discuss why generations of politicians have promised to reduce immigration before promptly increasing it. Coming up immediately, will a summit of European leaders help the Prime Minister to reset his relationship with the European Union? This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. A summit meeting in London tomorrow will bring together the United Kingdom and the European Union as Sir Keir Starmer pursues his policy of resetting the relationship between the two. The speculation is that Britain will pay to gain access to a defence procurement fund and in return admit European young people for up to 3 years, an idea that has alarmed Labour Red Wall MPs. What can Britain hope to gain and at what cost? Joining me now is the economist and fellow at the Centre for Brexit Policy, Catherine McBride. Welcome. Lovely to see you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Should we think about the young people first? Is it pretty clear that young people are going to get this access to the United Kingdom for 3 years? Young people being defined as 18 to 30, I believe.
Well, actually, I saw something in the paper today saying it's 18 to 40,
wow,
which is good for people who are not in that bracket. We can continue to pretend we're not very old. But I think young people should stop at 25, really. But anyhow...
So that would be quite a broad swathe of people.
Well, it depends on if there's caps on it, which is one of the issues many people are worried about, because obviously there are 27 EU countries, and if they all have a cap for 25,000 or 30,000, that could mean a lot of people. Also, there's talk that they'll be able to come in and go to our universities and pay the same fees as UK students, which is terrifying, really.
Terrifying because of the loss of income to our universities, do you mean?
Well, the loss of income to our universities, but also the fact that there aren't any equivalent universities in the EU. You know, if you look at the list of the top 10 or top 100 universities.
Yeah.
You know, they're mainly in the US or the UK, even Singapore, some other places around the world. And so...
One thing in which we continue to excel.
Yes. So though this youth mobility is each way, there will be a lot more EU students coming to the UK than there will be UK students going to the EU.
And by the way, whoever these people are and however virtuous they are, and even if they're only coming temporarily and all those things, they've got to be accommodated somewhere. And all people who come into this country put extra pressure on accommodation, and accommodation is not easy to come by. So I think one can see why Red Wall Labour MPs must be a bit alarmed. Also, I'm rather surprised, I mentioned this in the last discussion, but, you know, the Prime Minister, having made a big thing last week of having a new immigration policy, he doesn't even get to the Monday of the following week before he's announced a huge exception to this, with many thousands of young people coming in to, as I say, to occupy houses and flats and accommodations under great strain.
I have a feeling he's trying to appease both sides of the fence, if you like. So he says something for his Red Wall voters, or not that he's got many these days, but the people in the Red Wall get sort of the Monday report, and the people who want to rejoin metropolitan London elite, they get the Friday report. You know, it's kind of one or the other. It's the same with he's signing trade deals with the US and India on Monday, and then he's talking about resetting the EU on Friday. You know, he's trying to appease everyone, and it's going to, I think, go horribly wrong for him.
Because one of the things that people rather tend to forget while they're denouncing Donald Trump for his tariffs is that the European Union exists behind a tariff wall.
Oh, massive tariff wall. I did an analysis of this when they put up the 10% tariffs, not the 25 ones, on our agricultural tariffs. And ours are very similar to the EU's. Ours are now in pounds, and we've rounded the percentages down. But in general, if they're 12.6%, we're 12%, and ours is in pounds, theirs is in euros. But we're still more expensive than US tariffs on food. And the US did have tariffs on food. They were not tariff-free as they are with a whole lot of other industrial goods. So they did have tariffs on a lot of food. Lamb, interestingly enough, was zero tariffed. But we never thought about exporting lamb there, which was really silly because now it's got 10% on it. But you have things like beef or whatever. Ours, they're a fraction of the UK tariffs. So
let's come to defence. How impressed are you by the opportunity, for which I believe we're going to have to pay, to be able to access a part, but probably with a strict limit, of an EU procurement fund?
It's completely ridiculous. The UK makes very good defence equipment, And if the EU was actually serious about setting up a proper combined army, which is what I think they're doing, then they would want to buy defence equipment from the most efficient producer of that equipment, whether that's the UK or the US or somewhere completely different. The idea that we have to pay for them to then give some of it back to a couple of companies in the UK. So all taxpayers pay in, and then one or two companies will benefit if they spend a little bit of that money on their goods, which they might not. If you remember the vaccine during COVID,
I do.
You know, the EU wanted a French company, Sanofi, to get that contract. So they sort of held everything up, hoping that the French would come up with a vaccine, which they didn't come up with in the end. It never worked. And that's how the EU think. If they can, they will push all of their effort behind an EU company. So I'm not even sure that any UK defence company will get anything out of this.
What about this expression, dynamic alignment? Is this coming? This means that we would sign up to EU laws, which obviously we have no part in making because we're not a member of the European Union, but we'd be bound by them. I mean, this would be a major loss from the Brexit deal, wouldn't it?
It would be a massive loss to our economy. Forget the Brexit deal. It would destroy us. You only need to look at what's happening in the EU. You know, no economy in the EU is doing very well. Germany, the engine of the EU, the main economy, has been flatlining for 3 years now. You know, 3 years of nothing happening in Germany, no growth whatsoever, and we want to align with them. It's the most insane thing I've ever seen. They've killed their own industry, they're desperate for money, and they will offer anything to some rather silly UK politicians who think that joining the EU will turn it magically back into 2015. Well, 2015 is gone. The EU is gone. The EU is drowning, and like all drowning people, they often kill their saviour because they're so desperate to get out of the water.
And one last thought. Why is it when I tour the UK, as I do, making films, that all the fishing ports are now virtually museums? You know, there's hardly any fishing left in the UK, and yet our waters are full of fish and seafood, and our European partners are very good at consuming seafood and fish. How come our industry has been destroyed? What happened?
Well, there's competition for things like chicken. When I was a kid, they said that...
Chicken? I was talking about fish.
I know, but that's... You know, people here used to eat fish and chips. It was a major food, and every high street had a fish and chip shop. Right. Now people have moved to chicken because it's really cheap and it's produced in factories in the UK. Don't let them kid you that that's an American thing. That's here. And it's in the EU as well. So people have a choice. They're eating less fish, but also we gave our waters away to the EU. And so that the EU is absolutely ravaging the UK's waters, and it shouldn't be. They should get it all back next year because the fishing agreement had to be renewed this year. And this was a time when we could take more back. And instead, the Labour Party wants to give more to the EU. If you look at France's EEZ, its economic exclusive zone, that covers all the French colonies, all around French Polynesia, New Caledonia, the Indian Ocean. They don't need any more fishing waters. You know, it's outrageous. It is outrageous.
Catherine McBride, thank you very much for being so very clear-cut about tomorrow's summit. Coming up, I'll be exploring the history of how we listen to music with author and music historian Elizabeth Sharkey. What did the compact disc do to our listening habits? But first, time is running out on your chance to win our biggest Great British giveaway to date. Your chance to drive away with a brand new motorhome worth over £67,000 and £5,000 in cash to spend however you like. Make sure you don't miss out. Here are the details that you'll need.
Someone is going to win the biggest prize package to date, and that someone could be you, driving away in this Elnag Baron 560 motorhome, courtesy of Marquis Leisure. It has plenty of room for your family of four, comes complete with kitchen, bathroom and all the space you'll need for life on the road. And the best news? You can drive it on your existing driving licence. Plus, we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. Don't delay. You can't can't win if you're not in the draw. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hello and welcome to a GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's been another slow start in places with low cloud. That will gradually lift and break to reveal plenty of warm sunshine and then a few more showers developing on Monday. So taking a look at the bigger picture, we're still under the influence of this area of high pressure, still with some brisk winds though coming down from a northeasterly direction. So always cooler along that eastern coast. We'll have some lingering low cloud here, might be quite slow to break across East Midlands and the southeast of England too as we go through this afternoon. But otherwise further towards the west, plenty of lengthy warm sunshine, highs of up to 23, possibly 24 degrees across parts of western Scotland, but always cooler where you have that onshore flow across parts of Scotland and running down that eastern coast. So for much of Scotland, it remains dry as we head through this evening. Still some low cloud hugging some coast, but across the far southwest, that's where we could see a few showers just bubbling up that could be on the heavy side. Otherwise, elsewhere, plenty of fine and dry weather to end Sunday. Now, as we go through Sunday evening and overnight, those showers across the north will sink their way southwards, just affecting parts of Wales. Then we'll see the return of low cloud. Could be thick enough in places for some patchy drizzle. And further towards the west, that's where we'll hold on to clearer skies, perhaps some mist and fog patches developing. Otherwise, similar temperatures to previous nights, ranging from 6 to 10 degrees. So as we start Monday morning, it's a bit of a messy picture. There'll be some showers first thing across parts of Wales, and then cloud gradually break up to reveal more sunny spells, but that will also allow some showers to break out across northern parts of England in particular. They could be on the heavy side. Cooler now out towards the west, with highs coming up at 21 or 22 in the south. Bye-bye.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. As we have mentioned throughout the morning, the Pope's inaugural Mass is taking place in Vatican City. In a speech, he's urged the rejection of hatred and division and disavowed an economic paradigm that exploits the Earth's resources and marginalises the poorest. So early words from His Holiness the Pope. And if you want to keep up to date with all of the latest on the Pope's inauguration Mass, you can scan the QR code, which is on your screen now, or you can head to GBN2 on YouTube. It's 40 years since Dire Straits chose to issue its epoch-making album Brothers in Arms on compact disc. CDs were meant to be much less likely to be damaged than vinyl records, and 1 billion were sold in the USA alone in the year 2000. How good were they? Sales of CDs are now pretty much minimal as we enjoy stream services. The technology has changed, but has the listener also become less demanding than in the past of superb sound quality. Here's a reminder of one of the songs on that CD.
We got some install microwave ovens, custom kitchen deliveries. We got some movies, refrigerators. We got some movies, color TV.
And joining me is the author and music historian Elizabeth Sharkey. Elizabeth, lovely to see you.
Hello.
Just Brothers in Arms to begin with. How do you rate that in the history of records?
Well, I have to confess, I'm not a huge Dire Straits fan, but I can hear that it's a beautifully produced album, and I can hear why it's sold so well, and it's a classic.
It's actually an album I very much enjoy.
Yes, I thought. Did it mean a lot to you for your?
Yeah, I think I still listen to it even today.
Yes.
But though probably not on CD, which is rather the point we're coming to.
Yeah.
So I remember as we moved from vinyl to CD, I was very much convinced that compact discs were going to be much less damageable.
Mm-hmm.
And that mattered to me a lot because it seemed to me that with vinyl, no matter how careful you were with your vinyl, it was so irritating. You'd go and put on a record, a beloved record, and suddenly there'd be a scratch on it. Suddenly there'd be a click on a track that you particularly liked.
And it's all over. It's ruined.
And it did ruin it. And then CDs came along, and to my mind, they were much more robust.
Yes.
I know they weren't quite, I think, as robust as people claimed that they were. They were not entirely indestructible. And if you dropped a pot of honey on them...
As they did in Tomorrow's World.
That did make a difference to the play quality.
Yes.
What did you think of compact discs?
Oh, well, I shall never forget the first time I experienced a compact disc. It was my brother bought a player in 1984, and I remember sort of sneaking a look at it, and he had a copy of Diamond Life, Sade's Diamond Life, and I put it on, and I lay on the carpet, and I will never forget the luxuriant power of that sound coming out, and I thought, oh, this is the future. But then I looked at it and I thought, well, this is a very high-tech piece of equipment. Surely it's not going to become the next big thing. But like all of these things, it starts off as a highly aspirational product and then it becomes available to everybody. So I was wrong about that. But I shall never forget that moment of it was the sonic power and the clarity of the CD when it first came out.
Do you have any view as to whether it had more clarity than vinyl?
I think it does, subjectively. Objectively, rather.
Objectively.
People are subjective about whether they prefer CDs to vinyls. Vinyl has got another place in our hearts because it was the medium through which the album became a creative force.
Yeah.
So it's always it's inextricably linked to Sgt. Pepper, which was the first point of critical success and commercial success, which is what music makers have been striving for ever since.
Very interesting. You described this moment of listening to your first CD.
Yeah.
And what you emphasised there is that you were listening on a proper sound system, decent amplifier, decent speakers. What strikes me now is that young people don't seem so interested in that. They're content to stream, and the problem with streaming is the sound is very compressed, so the sound quality is poorer.
Yeah.
But also they're listening on smart devices.
Yeah.
Little speakers that they have sitting on a table. Not the great big pieces of furniture that we had in the old days.
I know.
So has young taste changed? Are they less demanding of sound quality?
I think, well, it's interesting because I found an old stereo that was the exact make of the one that we had when we were children. It was a typical sort of radio LP player. And I took it to my sisters and my brother and I. We looked at it and thought, oh, my goodness, this is the exact replica, the exact machine that we had. And I forgot how awful the sound quality was.
But what sort of machine are you talking about? What vintage is that?
Oh, the 1970s.
Yeah.
So, but, it didn't matter at the time. I didn't care about sound quality as a young person. As I've got older, I've cared about sound quality more. But now I think it's convenience and abundance of music because you can get any music anywhere in the world now through streaming. And it's more the accessibility of it than the sound quality that might be more important.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't mentioned practical considerations. The CD was a great deal smaller than the LP, so in terms of storage, You needed less space to have the same amount of music.
Yes.
And of course, streaming requires no software whatsoever.
Yeah.
You don't have to have any shelves covered in records or discs at all.
Yeah.
And since most young people live in confined spaces, they don't particularly want to give them up either to a record collection or indeed to large record-playing machinery. Do you think that's part of it?
It is, but it's also what they've grown up with. It's just what they're used to. But what is interesting is there is a bit of a retro nostalgia attachment to CDs for younger people now because they relate it to their childhood, just as we do with vinyl. It's the sound of it. You know, when I walk into a room and there's a record on a record player playing, I feel such a warmth towards that moment because it emanates something that's very nostalgic. It's pre-digital, so it's an escape from the digital age. And perhaps there's a similar situation going on with younger people who are drawn to buying CDs, because Taylor Swift has a CD, there's the Arctic Monkeys released their albums on CDs, Ed Sheeran, even cassettes are actually making a comeback with the big sellers now.
And I think there has been a tiny bit of a backlash by some artists against people listening to their material streamed because of the compression, because of the loss of quality.
Yes.
And I must say, I am puzzled as to why young listeners would compromise on the quality of the sound.
I think if you haven't grown up with it, you don't know what you're missing. So perhaps it's just not important. And I don't do it anymore, but there was a time in my life where I couldn't leave the house without being plugged into music. And you just want to have it with you. I mean, I used to carry a great big, portable CD player around with me, which seems really ancient now.
A Walkman.
Yes. I mean, did I have a Walkman for a bit? Probably. But the CD was a big thing. And they just have to have music all the time. And if it means compromising sound quality, then so be it.
Please don't compromise. Listen to proper music on proper equipment. Thank you very much, Elizabeth Sharkey. Coming up, this week, experts declared that what was once believed to be a copy of the Magna Carta, bought by Harvard University for $27.50 in 1946, is actually genuine. Historian Tony McMahon will be here to tell me more. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, only on GB News.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. Well, looking further afield, there's plenty of sunny spells across Europe, but also some thunderstorms breaking out with an area of low pressure. So across parts of Madeira, the Canary Islands, dry, fine, sunny spells. But we do have this area of low pressure, and across parts of Spain, northern Portugal, there will be some heavy and intense downpours, similar across parts of northeastern Europe as well. And that theme continues with sunny spells, but some showers too that could be heavy.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
It is cruel because I think children are only your children for 16 years, 18 years, right? And then they go and they have to do all this stuff for themselves. I think while they're young, their main priorities should be their education, coming in, doing their homework, getting to bed, getting enough sleep. My children, for example, are 11 and 16, so one's doing his GCSEs, the other still randomly has a ton of homework, even at 11. By the time they've come in and done their homework, they're exhausted and they go to bed. I just don't think it is my job as a parent to tell them to then go and mop the floor or hoover their bedrooms. Their main focus is their education at this age.
Yeah. You made my blood run cold there talking about homework, because I'm not a believer in homework. I think school is where you do work and then you come home, and home is where you can do anything else that you want to do, but I just think it's just all too much.
I think this is a tricky one because we're not talking about Victorian Britain or sending children up chimneys. We're talking making your bed, tidying your room. I think it's a great help for people to do chores around the house. There's been several studies where they've seen that it's had beneficial well-being for children. And I think it's just about learning about time management, confidence, resilience. These are just basic life skills. So many people these days, teenagers, grow up and they don't have them, and then they're going off to university or whatever. I saw a really funny video actually of a mum who couldn't get her child to clean up, so she got black rice, sprinkled it around the room and told him it was mouse droppings. Now, I don't know if we need to go that far, but I do think it's good for children as a whole.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. This week, experts declared what was once believed to be a copy of Magna Carta, bought by Harvard University for $27.50 in 1946, to be an original copy. Today, 24 of these originals survive from the various editions between 1215 and 1300, most of which are in the United Kingdom. That leaves me somewhat confused about what an original is. But to explain that to me, the historian Tony McMahon joins me. Gosh, this is confusing. Magna Carta was signed in 1215.
Yes.
So the document that has come to light in Harvard was thought to be from what date and is actually from what date?
Right. So just to clarify everything. So there's 4 copies of the document signed in 1215. 2 of those are in the British Library. Very easy to go and visit. 1 in Lincoln Castle and 1 in Salisbury Cathedral.
All dated 1215?
They're all dated 1215. So if you go to the British Library, you can see the original, or Salisbury Cathedral. They've got a little room there you can go to. And then the Kings reissued Magna Carta under pressure, although they kept taking clauses out that they didn't like. But this one comes from 1300, so that's about, my math is always terrible, 85 years after Magna Carta was signed. And this is King Edward I, who you may remember from the Braveheart movie, who was the very violent King of England. He reissues it in 1300, 7 copies. And this, though, was thought to be a later copy, much later, just 25 years, 30 years later. The fact that it's one of the 7 copies, I hope everybody's following me on this. The fact it's one of the 7 copies from 1300 means that instead of being worth $27.50, which is apparently what Harvard paid for it from a bookseller in the 1940s, it's worth probably around 20 million. The last time one was sold was 2007, and it went for 21 million pounds. Bit of a difference.
OK, so in a way, these 1300 documents are copies.
Yes.
Because they're copies of 1215.
Yeah.
However, they're reissued by a king, and they're not quite the same, so they have an intense historical significance in themselves.
Yes. I mean, Magna Carta is, you know, it has more of an impact outside of Britain in a way than in Britain.
In the United States?
In the United States, in Australia, the former Commonwealth countries. You've got to imagine that before Magna Carta was signed, England was a pretty lawless place, and might was right. If you had a sword, you were the law. And Magna Carta is the first time that really we say the law is the law. It's not the king. It's not what the king wants. It's not what a very powerful baron wants or whatever. The law is the law. It's something that sits apart. And that's why it's become so influential on people drafting constitutions, like the Founding Fathers. I mean, the Americans venerate this document. You know, the Great Charter. So hugely significant.
And would I be exaggerating if I said that in Britain, we lost sight of Magna Carta? We didn't allude to Magna Carta. It didn't seem to be of any great significance to us for some centuries until around 1776, when the Americans find that it's deeply significant.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of remembered at the time of Cromwell, for obvious reasons, because they didn't like the king. It's then really until the Victorian era that we start talking about Magna Carta again. But the thing about Britain, of course, is we've gone for this kind of unwritten constitution. So we don't have a written constitution like the Americans do. So we kind of forgot about it because we decided not to have that kind of constitution. Whereas the Americans have got, you know, we the people, they've got that constitution. So they kind of revere Magna Carta as a kind of foreshadowing, a prototype of their constitution.
Now, people who do want to have a look at Magna Carta, we've first of all, where can we go and see 1215s? You've mentioned the British Library, and you say it's easy to get in there. Lincoln and Salisbury, easy to see in those two places?
Yes, I was at Lincoln Castle just after Christmas. You can pop in there, they've got a little room for it. And Salisbury Cathedral, well, it's a beautiful cathedral anyway, wonky spire as well. You can go and have a look at all of that. And they've got a room there where you can go in and see the Magna Carta.
And are the 1,300 Magna Cartas also on display?
So there are 6 of them in the UK. I'm going to be honest, I don't know where they all are.
No,
one of them, only the one, the Harvard one, is outside of the country. So I think if you I'm afraid to say, if you use Google, you may be able to find where the other ones are. But those 4 you can definitely see. British Library, very easy. Pop up the stairs from the cafe, turn left. I assure you, it's there. You can go and see it.
Just a word more. Why do the Americans in 1776, why do they, as it were, rediscover Magna Carta? How do they rediscover Magna Carta?
Yeah. I mean, there was a huge English history. A lot of them are English history buffs, basically. Thomas Jefferson knew his English history. But if you think about it, what were the barons doing in 1215? They were fed up of this overbearing king, you know, that we used to call Bad King John. He's a king who's vilified in the Robin Hood stories. And for the American founding fathers, they thought, well, we've got an overbearing king. He's called George III. We don't like him. Hang on a moment. One of his ancestors got a good seeing to from the barons. Maybe we're the barons of today. We're putting this king in his place. So I think they saw themselves as the inheritors of the Magna Carta mantle. They were putting a tyrannical king in his place. And so their constitution was the new Magna Carta.
Very good. It makes it fundamentally interesting. And Harvard is extremely lucky to discover that it's got a better document than it thought. Thank you very much indeed, Tony McMahon. You made it all very clear. That concludes the first hour of Sunday with Michael Portillo. Please rejoin me at noon, where my panel will discuss why, over many years, politicians have promised to reduce immigration, but in office allowed it to increase. I'll also be joined by Stefan Kyriazis, who will report back on his trips to the land of make-believe, that is to say the theatre. Author Julian Francis Godolphin will instruct us on the role that the monarch plays in the British Constitution. And we will discuss why it might be that an increasing number of young adults escape modern dating woes by enjoying the novels of Jane Austen. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, only on GB News.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to a GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's been another slow start in places with low cloud. That will gradually lift and break to reveal plenty of warm sunshine and then a few more showers developing on Monday. So taking a look at the bigger picture, we're still under the influence of this area of high pressure, still with some brisk winds though coming down from a northeasterly direction. So always cooler along that eastern coast. We'll have some lingering low cloud here, might be quite slow to break across East Midlands and the southeast of England too as we go through this afternoon. But otherwise further towards the west, plenty of lengthy warm sunshine, highs of up to 23, possibly 24 degrees across parts of western Scotland, but always cooler where you have that onshore flow across parts of Scotland and running down that eastern coast. So for much of Scotland, it remains dry as we head through this evening. Still some low cloud hugging some coast, but across the far southwest, that's where we could see a few showers just bubbling up that could be on the heavy side. Otherwise, elsewhere, plenty of fine and dry weather to end Sunday. Now, as we go through Sunday evening and overnight, those showers across the north will sink their way southward, just affecting parts of Wales. Then we'll see the return of low cloud. Could be thick enough in places for some patchy drizzle. And further towards the west, that's where we'll hold on to clearer skies, perhaps some mist and fog patches developing. Otherwise, similar temperatures to previous nights, ranging from 6 to 10 degrees. So as we start Monday morning, it's a bit of a messy picture. There'll be some showers first thing across parts of Wales, and then cloud gradually break up to reveal more sunny spells, but that will also allow some showers to break out across northern parts of England in particular. They could be on the heavy side, cooler now out towards the west, with highs coming up at 21 or 22 in the south. Bye-bye.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
What does it feel like to be a Great British Giveaway winner?
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God, I'm gonna cry.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon.
Yes, that is fantastic.
You know, you have no idea how much I needed it. Oh my goodness. That's wonderful. Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I was gobsmacked. Thank you, GBNews.
I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
Thank you.
You weren't expecting to get that call today, were you?
No, I wasn't.
You really could be our next big winner. Head over to gbnews.com/win now to find out how and get your entry for the Great British Giveaway. Great prizes, even greater wins.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays, I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow described May as a perfumed word. You're most welcome on this fragrant mid-May afternoon here on Sunday with Michael Portillo for another hour of current affairs, theatre, literature and arts. Why do the Conservative and Labour parties regularly promise to cut immigration but then allow it to increase? My panel returns to discuss whether it's incompetence or a will to defy the electorate. Stefan Kyriazis has been installed in the stalls of London's theatres this week. He'll join me with his reviews. The monarch still plays a role in the British Constitution, especially in times of crisis. The King is there to encourage, advise and warn Prime Ministers. But what else? I'll find out. In the 250th anniversary year of Jane Austen's birth, one tour company based in Bath has experienced a 50% increase in bookings. Why is Austen's appeal particularly high with lovesick Gen Zs? But before all of that, your latest news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Michael, thank you very much and good afternoon. The top stories. Pope Leo has given his first major address during his inauguration ceremony attended by world leaders and thousands of faithful. The Pope greeted crowds of faithful as he headed to the Vatican earlier on in the Pope-mobile, marking the first time he's travelled in the vehicle since his election. UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy, Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner and the Duke of Edinburgh, who was representing the King, were among attendees at the outdoor Mass in the Vatican this morning. They joined politicians from across the world, including Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and US President J.D. Vance. Pope Leo marked the start of his papacy by calling for unity within the Church and for it to act as a leaven of harmony for humanity. The government says it's working right up to the wire to secure a new deal with Europe ahead of a summit with EU leaders next week. The deal could grant the UK access to a major EU defence fund, as well as lower household bills and a youth mobility scheme. There are some concerns this would mean a return to freedom of movement, but Cabinet Office Minister Nick Thomas-Symonds told GBNews that is not the case.
Firstly, we will not go back to freedom of movement. And secondly, anything has to be consistent with the government's approach in the migration white paper last week to reduce the level of net migration. The level of net migration has been too high. That's what people have been telling us on the doorsteps. It quadrupled between 2019 and 2023 to just under 1 million. This government is committed to bringing the net migration figure down, and that's exactly what we will do.
In other news, 2 people have been killed and 19 others injured after a Mexican Navy ship crashed into New York City's Brooklyn Bridge. Police said the training ship, with 277 people on board, lost power yesterday as the captain was manoeuvring the vessel. Footage shows the ship's towering mast clip the bridge as it passed under the structure. Crew members were standing on the mast as they snapped and fell to the deck. The New York City mayor confirmed on X that 2 people died and 2 of the 19 injured were in a critical condition. Brooklyn Bridge itself didn't suffer any major damage and was reopened after an inspection. Now, at least 100 people have been killed in Israeli strikes on Gaza overnight and into this morning, according to Gaza's health ministry. Women and children reportedly among the dead, as Israel launches an escalation of its war in Gaza to ramp up pressure on terror group Hamas to agree to a temporary ceasefire. The Israeli military had no immediate comment on the latest strikes. It comes as peace talks between Israel and Hamas take place in Qatar this weekend. And it was a night to remember at the 69th Eurovision Song Contest in Switzerland, but not quite for the UK's entry.
The hell just
Remember Monday placed 19th, receiving nil points from the public vote. Austria and Israel went head-to-head, but ultimately Austria won their 3rd Eurovision with musician JJ's techno opera song, Wasted Love. Israel's Yuval Raphael, who survived the 7th of October 2023 attacks, was the runner-up with piano ballad New Day Will Rise, performed in Hebrew, French and English. The singer was left shaken and upset after two pro-Palestinian protesters rushed towards her during her grand final performance. Organisers confirmed a backstage crew member was hit with paint but was not hurt. Those are your latest GB News headlines. More from me at 12:30. Now it's back to Portillo.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
My thanks to Tatiana Sanchez, who mentioned that the Pope's inaugural Mass is taking place in Vatican City. There's an audience of an estimated 200,000 people, including over 150 international delegations. If you want to keep up to date with all the latest on the Pope's inauguration Mass, please scan the QR code, which is on your screen now, or head to GBN2 on YouTube. Tony Blair, David Cameron and Boris Johnson promised to cut immigration, but under each of them, it increased. Under Johnson, it soared. This fact surely lies at the heart of reform's electoral surge. Why, when the majority of people wants immigration to fall, do our prime ministers allow it to rise? Do they belong to a liberal consensus that thinks that immigration is good? Do they despise the majority view? Are they afraid to challenge international law, or are they merely incompetent? Rejoining me now is my panel, pollster and founder of Merlin Strategy, Scarlett Maguire, former Director of Communications at Number 10, Giles Kenningham, and political commentator Matt Stadland. Giles, obviously I come to you first because you were in Number 10 when all this was happening. Why? Why do Conservative leaders, Labour leaders as well, allow immigration to balloon when they promise to reduce it?
I mean, look, I think successive prime ministers have failed on this, but I think the picture is a bit more nuanced. You know, we have sectors which heavily rely on immigrants. The NHS would probably grind to a halt without foreign doctors. The social care sector said that it would collapse if we didn't have foreign labour. Hospitality sector is massively reliant on foreign labour, and that's also, I suppose, one of the reasons why after COVID, when we lost so many sort of people went home, that immigration then surged again because certain sectors needed it. So, yes, successive prime ministers have failed. Yes, we need to get it under control. As I was saying previously, I do think, though, ironically, to get to that point, it relies on a better relationship with certain countries in Europe, with the French, with the Italians, with the Greeks, in terms of smashing the criminal gangs who are, you know, a massive funnel to immigrants, you know, illegal immigration coming into the country.
But do you think leaders do despise the majority view? Do they have some feeling that actually, you know, immigration is a good thing? I mean, in a way, you're halfway there yourself. You're saying this country needs immigration, but
this needs to be controlled.
But if that's the case, why don't prime ministers say, look, we need tens of thousands, we need hundreds of thousands, we need 1 million, however many it is. We need 1 million people or 900,000 to do this work, and therefore we're going to have a joined-up policy. We're going to build the schools and the houses and the hospitals that this extra population needs. I mean, the dishonesty of prime ministers strikes me as really appalling because they pretend they're going to cut it, and because they pretend they're going to cut it, they don't make any provision for services to meet the increased population, and therefore they guarantee the misery, and then they're surprised, if they are surprised, that they're rejected from office.
Well, yeah, I think the rhetoric has been wrong and it's been far too binary. I think it does have to adjust to the needs of the economy and the needs of the country.
Matt, what do you think? Do you think prime ministers basically have a different view from the electorate, and that's what comes through when they're governing?
It's very interesting because Boris Johnson, who, yes, sort of self-sabotaged and was hounded out of office by his own side in disgrace, you could argue is a very popular figure, wasn't he? And he won a landslide of 80 seats. Might even have won another election, who knows? And yet immigration, as I understand it, skyrocketed under his prime ministership. I think it's really tricky because we know, and this is why Labour is trying to address the welfare bill, we know that there are a lot of people who are not in work in this country, British people. Some of them with very, very good reason indeed, and I'm desperately keen that those people are not hurt by Labour's reforms, but some people who should be in work, who could be in work. And unless you get those people into work, and more than that, unless you get and this may be seen as a sort of tired old argument that was wheeled out before Brexit, but there's truth in it. Unless you get British people prepared to do a lot of the jobs that people coming from abroad do in our society, then we will see very serious repercussions if immigration is driven down for political reasons. Ms. Scarlett did a poll very recently, I think, which astonished me. And you cannot ignore it if you are a Prime Minister. And the poll said, and you'll know better than me, of course, that I think 63% of us want net immigration to be below 10,000 a year. And 85% of us want net migration to be below 100,000. And yet we've been in the high hundreds of thousands.
Yes, we were up at 900,000. But then your answer is rather similar to the one we heard before. You're saying basically that politicians have been lying and that actually we need lots of immigration. Is that what you're saying?
I can't speak for any of those Prime Ministers. You've already pointed out, I think, that successive Tory Prime Ministers said that they wanted to get immigration figures down considerably. I think you worked in number 10 when David Cameron was Prime Minister. He famously or infamously wanted it to get down to the tens of thousands, and of course that simply hasn't happened. I suspect it was not dishonest. I suspect it sort of caught up with them, and the reality facing them was that if we don't have high levels of immigration, because people are not prepared to do some of these jobs and because a lot of people are on welfare, then our society is going to really struggle. But you're absolutely right, Michael, when you say you've got to be competent as a government and at the very least make sure that the infrastructure keeps pace with the levels and the numbers of people coming into this country. Because if you don't, you're going to get massive, massive voter dissatisfaction.
Let me just stick with you for a moment, Matt. I'll be with you.
Because this is turning into a bit of a grilling.
Well, no, I'm interested in your theory that we need, quite large numbers in order to staff the health service and the care homes and so on. But the period before Tony Blair, for a very long time, immigration was at a very low level. So what are you saying has changed since then?
I think it's a really good question, and it's a question that all political parties should be asking themselves. I'm not saying that we need huge numbers of immigrants coming to this country, full stop. I'm saying if we don't get welfare policy right, and without hammering the most vulnerable, and if we don't persuade British people who have got used to immigrants, first of all from Europe, and now from further afield since Brexit, doing certain types of jobs, for which, by the way, we should all have respect, but which British people don't seem to be keen enough to do in any great numbers. If we don't get that right, then if we drive down the levels of immigration, we may suffer and things may get worse. That's all I'm saying. I'm pointing out that there is a really difficult, thorny problem. I'm not advocating here or there. I'm not saying I would love lots of immigration. Immigrants have contributed hugely to this country. But I quite understand, for all sorts of reasons, infrastructure, community cohesion, that we need to try and get those numbers down. The question is, what happens if we do?
Scarlett, do you want to say something, first of all, about the state of public opinion?
The public care about immigration a lot. They have done for a long time, but it's increasing. So there's a record amount of people now that put immigration in their top 3 issues. In fact, they put immigration in their top 3 issues more than any other issue, according to YouGov. Anyway, and as Matthew was saying, when I polled it, I found that 46% of the public want net zero or even fewer, so more people leaving than arriving immigration. And Matthew outlined the rest of the figures. And I think what was so striking about that was just 5% of the public, so 3% said they wanted between 500,000 and a million, and a further 2% said more than a million. Just 5% of the public want what has been the status quo in terms of policy making for the last few years, at any rate, as you quite rightly pointed out, since Boris Johnson. But I think what's remarkable now is that I remember doing broadcast interviews only 2 years ago, and people would ask about immigration, and I would say the public care about immigration. And that was a controversial thing to say then, or at least it could be. And actually, a lot of politicians, I think, it wasn't necessarily that they were lying. I think they genuinely didn't think it and thought that it was manufactured. And so I do think there is we've witnessed a huge sea change in the last few weeks, partly off the back of the locals, where for Keir Starmer to get up and make a speech like that for both of the 2 mainstream parties, and it took the Conservatives quite a long time to get there as well, to be talking in this way about immigration and, for as you say, to dial up the rhetoric, that is an extraordinary change from the political class.
Let me sit with Scarlett for a moment. What can you tell us about breakdown by region, by party and by class, to use that old-fashioned term?
Reform voters care the most strongly about immigration, and not just that. When another pollster looked at the reasons why people voted Reform at the local elections, it wasn't bin collections. The biggest reason given, the most popular reason given, was national policy on immigration. So it was to send a message on national immigration policy, which is an interesting factor. Reform voters care about it a great deal. Conservative voters care about it a great deal, not quite as much, but they still hugely care about it. And a very big chunk of Labour voters, especially those crucial Labour voters that Labour built their majority off in 2024 election, care about it enormously. And I think you will see that continue. And I think that's part of the problem with Keir Starmer's speech last week. We've already said that I feel like it left him in the worst of both worlds. But to my mind, he's falling in the same trap as the Conservative politicians were for the last couple of years, which is to say, to dial up the rhetoric, but without actually delivering anything. And I think that's the riskiest of all.
Giles, you wanted
I was just going to say, I think Scarlett touched upon something very important there. For so long in this country, you couldn't have an honest conversation on immigration. Tony Blair weaponised it, and quite frankly, if you did, I think in the early, late noughties, everyone was like, oh, you're being racist. And I remember when I was in government, we came out and said we thought all immigrants should learn English if they come to this country, which to me seems like an eminently sensible argument for social mobility, for integration. So I think that has also been a problem, that no one's been really, for a long time, willing to have that conversation. We're coming to it, but obviously it's very late in the day.
Matt, I may have asked you this in the past, I can't remember, but the people who are most affected by immigration are working class people. The upper classes and the middle classes are much less affected. Therefore, you might think that the Labour Party would care about immigration more than anyone else. And yet, despite what Keir Starmer has said last week, nobody really believes that the Labour Party cares more about this than, say, Reform. So that's a problem for Labour, isn't it? That they're not really consonant with their base.
Yeah, I think it is. I don't know. You assert that immigration affects working class people more than it does anyone else. I don't know whether that is necessarily backed up by the polling. It may well be. It's important to remember, of course, that working class people, to the extent that we have the working classes anymore in this country, don't all think as a bloc. I mean, any more than any other class or constituency.
All of these caveats are right, but come to the point.
Coming to the point, I mean, essentially you're asking me in a different sort of way is how does Labour hold on to those seats it still has in for example, the red wall areas of this country? And of course that is an electoral challenge, and it's something Scarlett pointed out earlier about how Labour holds together a very fragile coalition. And it is a very fragile coalition if we're talking politically, because I think, and this is probably true to an extent of Blair as well, actually, that Labour won such a big majority, not because of any great enthusiasm for Starmer or Labour, but because people wanted to teach the Tories a lesson. Was that a very political answer?
It wasn't much of an answer, I thought, if that's what you mean by a political answer. But thank you. Nonetheless, I think you've been a most distinguished panel, and you've spoken very well, and I'm most grateful to you. That's Scarlett Maguire, Giles Kenningham and Matthew Stadlen. Coming up, the curtain rises on Stefan Kyriazis' theatre reviews. Thank you, Pat. You have done very well, actually. Oh, sorry. Time is running out on your chance to win our biggest Great British giveaway today. Your chance to drive away with a brand new motorhome worth over £67,000 and £5,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. Make sure you don't miss out. Here are the details that you'll need.
Someone is going to win the biggest prize package to date, and that someone could be you, driving away in this Elnag Baron 560 motorhome, courtesy of Marquis Leisure. It has plenty of room for your family of four, comes complete with kitchen, bathroom and all the space you'll need for life on the road. And the best news? You can drive it on your existing driving licence. Plus, we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. Don't delay. You can't win if you're not in the draw. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Martin Daubney. Weekdays from 3 p.m.
Ranjit Mathrani. Ranjit, welcome to the show. You're being booted out by the Crown or State. What's going on?
Well, the answer is I don't know, because they keep on giving different reasons on different occasions with one simple objective, to get us out of the premises. And the irony is that 1 year before they decided not to terminate our lease, they actually invited us to take over more space on the first floor of the restaurant. And then they dramatically changed their mind. I'm sorry about the background noise, I'm the evidence. They dramatically changed their mind after a blocked drain, which they blamed on us, which wiped out their electrics. And they claim they needed space, 11 square meters of the space for their entrance. On other occasions, they claim they need the space in order to do the refurbishment works. Neither of those arguments are very convincing. They could have a reception space if they wanted to on the first floor, and they can work around us, as many landlords have done, in refurbishing the offices.
So, Ranjit, if I may interject, Ranjit, if I may interject, we don't have a great deal of time left. Ostensibly, they're trying to hike up your rent, and you think they're using a backdoor method of doing so to get you out. You're an institution in London.
We are indeed an institution, not only that, we are a living institution. You know, we were invited to cater for the Queen on 2 occasions, but in Paris, she in fact agreed to have dinner with us before COVID struck.
GB News.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. During Boris Johnson's premiership, relations with Buckingham Palace were in tatters when he advised her to prorogue Parliament, advice which was subsequently struck down by the Supreme Court. When Johnson was hospitalised with COVID, the Queen's advisers had to consider whether, should he fall into a coma, she would have to dismiss him in order to be able to appoint a new Prime Minister. Those examples demonstrate that the monarch plays a role in our Constitution. Julian Francis Godolphin has set out to define what it is in his book On His Majesty's Service, and he joins me now along with a copy of the book.
Indeed. Thank you, Michael.
In the book, you make a remark to the effect that many of us don't understand the role of the monarch and that it is important that we should do so.
Yep.
Why so?
So I think most people, when we think of the monarch, we think of someone who opens things, who does diplomatic functions in Downing Street, has nice dinners and so on, is in Westminster Abbey for those key moments. And that is a very important part of their role. They are that social unifier of the nation. But they also have a certain constitutional function, and we tend not to talk about that. And it's pretty much started with Walter Bagehot, who wrote a book called The English Constitution, in which he said that the Constitution could be broken down into dignified and efficient. And dignified was something that essentially was there to show the grandeur of the state, and the efficient was actually doing things, getting the nuts and bolts, what the Prime Minister does every day. And what that has meant is that many of us just look at the monarch and think, oh, well, they're just dignified. They don't have any role. But that's not true. There are certain unique powers that the king has that are there in case of emergency, that ensure that the Constitution can function and that the rule of law is upheld should we actually get into political crises.
For example?
So, for example, I mean, if we look at a situation you've just mentioned there, we had a situation where Boris Johnson was talking about refusing to agree to a piece of legislation to be passed during Brexit that would require him to have extended negotiations with Brussels. He'd come in on a platform saying, actually, we're going to leave the EU, no ifs, no buts, and I'm not going to extend. Parliament had passed a piece of legislation saying if he had not got a deal by a certain point of time, he would have to do that extension. So he was in saying that he would not follow that law. And what we had a situation was fascinating meetings of which the senior civil servants had to basically tell him, if you act illegally, we will have to notify the Queen that you are unfit to govern and that she should dismiss you. This immediately shut down the conversation. Johnson suddenly realised actually he is answerable to a higher power, that there is someone that can dismiss him from office, and he swung behind the legislation, and he didn't like it, but we did have that Brexit extension.
Did he flirt with the idea of asking the Queen not to give royal assent?
Yes, he did.
To that legislation?
Yes, he did.
And what happened to that ploy that the Queen presumably refused to give royal assent?
Yes, that's essentially what happened. So this is, I mean, the fascinating things that we saw about this Brexit period of time is that they seriously contemplated whether the government could advise the Queen to refuse royal assent. And technically, yes, they could, but the palace has a discretion. So the government cannot bind the monarch's actions when it comes to royal assent. So the palace let it be known to Johnson that if he asked for that, the Queen would have to say no. And just the mere fact that that was what the answer would be meant the question was never put in the first place, and the process was never then really looked at. And that's sort of how the monarchy works. It's this influence behind the scenes. It's nudging. It's not a direct use of power in the way that we would expect a prime minister to do it. It's through influence and the sheer heft of the institution that they can say this is something that will happen, and those powers back that up.
We began the conversation by talking about the powers of the monarch, the powers of the king, because he is the monarch at the moment. However, the conversation has kind of shifted now towards talking about what officials do. So it's still quite hard for us to imagine a conversation, let's say, between Boris and Her Majesty the Queen, the late Queen, in which the late Queen says, no, Prime Minister, I'm not going to do that. It doesn't reach that stage because the officials have sorted it out beforehand.
Broadly, in this country, yes. So the king is also the king of several other Commonwealth realms where he is represented by governors or governor-generals within those, and it's slightly different there. There's less protection for the governor-generals from that. In the UK, the civil service is very clear in not wanting to have advice go to the monarch that would in any way make them into a political actor. So no one wants to see these powers actually used. But the truth is we really don't know what goes on because there is a weekly audience between the monarch and the Prime Minister where no notes are taken, no one knows what the conversations are about. And it's in this arena that the monarch is able to advise, counsel and warn their Prime Minister. And they can have a situation where a Prime Minister may come and say, I'm considering X. And the monarch may say, you may want to think about that, Prime Minister. This may be the consequences of you doing that. Or if you did go down that route, you may place me in a position where I would have to act in a certain way, and perhaps that isn't wise. And so we really don't know how, no one knows. No one really knows what those conversations are. So we have no idea to what degree this influence is used on a regular basis.
Let's distinguish between those two. I can well imagine, let's talk about Her late Majesty for a moment.
Sure.
I can well imagine Her Majesty being forced to say to the Prime Minister, please don't do that, Prime Minister, or it would be unfortunate if you did that, Prime Minister, because I would have to take advice on doing this, that and the other. But do you think that the Queen, who'd been on the throne since 1952, felt that because of her enormous experience, the fact she had, 13 Prime Ministers,
yes.
Do you think that she felt able sometimes to say, Tony, is that really a good idea? Do you think that that kind of very informal advice simply about the policy direction in which the Prime Minister was headed at the time?
Absolutely. So the longer the monarch is in their role, they gain more heft because they'll have seen everything. So all government decisions have to go before them. They read everything that goes on, so they know. And by the time the Queen got to her latter part of her reign, she had seen so much. She had known so much. Governments had come and gone with very similar policies. So she was able to be a font of knowledge for those prime ministers. And wise prime ministers use that because you've got a situation where the weekly audience is the one meeting you know will never leak. It's with the one person you know is not trying to backstab you or replace you in your job or whatever. And it's the one person who is really constitutionally there to give you support, just as you are supposed to give them support as well. So it can become a very, very trusting relationship, and all kinds of conversations can happen. And we've seen this in some of the memoirs. So Harold Wilson was very open about his close relationship with the Queen and the conversations he was able to discuss with her that he couldn't discuss with his cabinet colleagues. John Majors also said that he had a very open relationship with the Queen, and he found that her experience and her advice was tremendously useful when it came for him to actually deal with his own policies.
Is there any power that comes to your mind that we haven't talked about just now, and that hasn't come up in recent history? Is there a power that we should be aware of? Going back to your original point,
yeah, so I mean,
we ought to know what the monarch's there for.
I think one of the things that we need to somewhat be aware of is this action that the monarch not only appoints but can dismiss a prime minister in certain circumstances. And the late Queen did actually dismiss several prime ministers, not only just here but also in the UK. And those caused some crises, particularly in Australia. We may remember that Gough Whitlam was actually dismissed, and Malcolm Fraser was actually appointed by the Governor-General in the Queen's name. That is still a burning issue in Australia today about whether the monarch should be able to intervene in that way in politics. As it was, Malcolm Fraser went on to win a general election, and therefore the decision was seen to be valid. Just recently, Boris Johnson came very close to dying in office, and we may have been in a situation where if he had been comatose, the monarch may have to have stepped in and gone, I'm giving you a letter to a comatose Prime Minister that you are dismissed. And the Cabinet will have advised her who to appoint as the next Prime Minister, who will have then kissed hands in Downing Street, or in Buckingham Palace.
Julian, very interesting. Do you want to just hold your book up? It's called On His Majesty's Service. Julian Francis Godolphin. Most interesting discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Coming up, Stefan Kyriazis is going to be talking to me about his theatre reviews. And we're coming up now to the news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you so much.
Michael, thank you very much. The top stories. Pope Leo has given his first major address during his inauguration ceremony, attended by world leaders and thousands of faithful. The Pope greeted crowds of faithful as he headed to the Vatican in the Pope-mobile, marking the first time he's travelled in the vehicle since his election. UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy, Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner and the Duke of Edinburgh, who was representing the King, were among attendees at the outdoor Mass in the Vatican this morning. The Pope is due to have private meetings with Ukraine's President Zelensky after addressing tens of thousands at the Vatican. In that speech today, he called for lasting peace in Ukraine. The government says it's working right up to the wire to secure a new deal with Europe ahead of a summit with EU leaders next week. The deal could grant the UK access to a major EU defence fund, as well as lower household bills and a youth mobility scheme. There are some concerns this would mean a return to freedom of movement, but Cabinet Office Minister Nick Thomas-Symonds says that's not the case. And at least 100 people have been killed in Israeli strikes on Gaza overnight and into today, according to Gaza's health ministry. Women and children were reportedly among the dead there as Israel launches an escalation of its war in Gaza to ramp up pressure on terror group Hamas to agree to a temporary ceasefire. The Israeli military had no immediate comment on the latest strikes. It comes as peace talks between Israel and Hamas take place in Qatar this weekend. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more from me at 1 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's been another slow start in places with low cloud. That will gradually lift and break to reveal plenty of warm sunshine and then a few more showers developing on Monday. So taking a look at the bigger picture, we're still under the influence of this area of high pressure, still with some brisk winds though coming down from a northeasterly direction. So always cooler along that eastern coast. We'll have some lingering low cloud here, might be quite slow to break across East Midlands and the South southeast of England too as we go through this afternoon. But otherwise, further towards the west, plenty of lengthy, warm sunshine, highs of up to 23, possibly 24 degrees across parts of western Scotland, but always cooler where you have that onshore flow across parts of Scotland and running down that eastern coast. So for much of Scotland, it remains dry as we head through this evening. Still some low cloud hugging some coast, but across the far southwest, that's where we could see a few showers just bubbling up that could be on the heavy side. Otherwise, elsewhere, plenty of fine and dry weather to end Sunday. Now, as we go through Sunday evening and overnight, those showers across the north will sink their way southwards, just affecting parts of Wales. Then we'll see the return of low cloud. Could be thick enough in places for some patchy drizzle. And further towards the west, that's where we'll hold on to clearer skies, perhaps some mist and fog patches developing. Otherwise, similar temperatures to previous nights, ranging from 6 to 10 degrees. So as we start Monday morning, it's a bit of a messy picture. There'll be some showers first thing across parts of Wales, and then cloud gradually break up to reveal more sunny spells, but that will also allow some showers to break out across northern parts of England in particular. They could be on the heavy side, cooler now out towards the west, with highs coming up at 21 or 22 in the south. Bye-bye.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Stefan Kyriazis has rushed from theatre seat to theatre seat without once stalling. He's here to tell me what he's seen and what he's heard. Stefan, lovely to see you. What have you seen?
I've seen an absolutely fantastic show, but it's not the first one we're going to deal with, which is, for me, as bad as your jokes. So first up, we've got Deep Blue Sea with Tamsin Greig, sensational actress, Hadley Fraser supporting her. Really good, well, sorry, half a good cast. And this last year was at the Euston Theatre in Bath. Huge critical raves, but not so much in London. Same cast, same production, same everything. But the Euston has got 100 and something seats, 125 seats. It's now at the Theatre Royal Haymarket in London, 888 seats. And it just gets a little bit lost. So we have one very dreary set, and it's Terence Rattigan's 1950s play, sort of autobiographical. He had a male lover that left him for a younger bounder who then broke his heart and he tried to take his own life. This play opens with Tamsin Greig as Hester, discovered on the floor of a very, very drab bedsit, having tried to do the same in front of her gas fire. So it's a black satire, but also it's about a woman trying to find her place in the world, so in a way ahead of its time. And there's some really interesting thoughts in there. Greig is good. She's very good at sort of repressed, cold, but stuff bubbling underneath. But a bit like I've said before in other shows, it's all based on the fact that she ran away with this cad, this bounder who was hot and handsome when she was married to a judge who was very proper and stiff, and she wanted the excitement and she felt passion. I don't feel any of that passion between her and Hadley Fraser as Freddie on stage. So that kind of takes away a bit from it. And then it's just the tone. It's played a lot for laughs, and there's a lot of humour in it. But I think it left the audience a little bit wrong-footed. So there are moments when they were laughing when I really felt they shouldn't. There's a very fantastically creepy, strange doctor that lives above who's been struck off, again, coded for being homosexual. And he's fantastic. Gives some of the best lines. There's one line that says, "To love with one's eyes open makes life very difficult." really great lines, but he mainly got laughs from the audience. So for me, balance is off. Some truly terrible supporting actors, who I won't name, but just seem to be in a sort of 50s kitsch sort of parody of that period. Very mixed for me, very disappointing, hey-ho, but it's on at the Theatre Royal Haymarket until June the 21st.
Ooh.
Didn't... you've just been left quiet.
Will they sell the seats? We'll see.
Who knows?
OK, let's get on something that you're more enthusiastic about.
I would say very quickly, I bang on about it all the time, National Theatre at Home, which is where you can watch shows. They record them. It's sensational, $9.99 a month, and you can watch whatever you want. They've got some of the biggest shows, biggest names. They've got a previous version with Helen McCrory in it and Tom Burke, where you get the electrifying chemistry, and you also get, for me, much more passion. So I'd just say, go and look at National Theatre at Home. It's really wonderful. However, hurrah, something much more jolly and silly, which is much more like me. Don't like any of the serious stuff. We've got the comedy about spies, and we've got a silly little clip to get you in the mood first.
Surprise! Hey! Go!
Oh, Bernard, keep your voice down, sweetie. We're undercover.
Drop the weapon! Ah! What weapons? Ah!
They turned him again.
Ah! I need you all over it.
Sir!
No, stop it. Give it. Stop it. Give it. Stop it.
OK, you enjoyed it a lot, did you?
Well, that's more my level, so that's about as profound as I get. So, yeah, these are the guys. This is the Mischief Theatre Company, and they were behind The Play That Goes Wrong, which is one of my favourite shows. I cried from laughing in that. It's so good. And that's a spoof on people putting on a Agatha Christie's whodunit. This one is a bit more straightforward. No one's putting on a play. This is just a completely ridiculous... It's like a Cold War spiffing spoof about spies, Michael. That's my attempt.
Very good.
And it's basically, you've got rotten Ruskies, sort of brash, loud Yanks, and terribly posh Brits. It starts off at MI6. The big chap there is Henry Lewis, with the beard. He's kind of the big boss of Mischief, been in it from the start. He writes it with Henry Shields, who's also in the show, and is there, actually, with him. Oh, no, he's not. That's one of the others. They did a clip at the Royal Variety Show, which is the opening scene. Basically, you know, like M&Q in Bond.
Yes.
So everybody's in it, but they're called U, I, O, and all those things. So the whole conversation, people keep popping in every time someone says U, I, O, whatever, C. Brilliant. There's an incredible shot, I think you saw there. There's a cross-section of 4 rooms when they all converge on a hotel for the handover of secret stolen plans. They're all dashing in and out of rooms, out windows, sometimes through the floors. It's very, very, very sort of old school, classic slapstick. A bit like Noises Off. It really works for me. Little bit of a sag in the second act, and it's a little bit too... There's a secret hotel inspector. Didn't really work for me. And also a very crotchety old lady. I could have done without both of those, and they're too heavily sort of aping Monty Python, Fawlty Towers. The rest of it, brilliant, I laughed. It's silly, it's not profound, but gosh, do we need a bit of joy at the moment and a bit of fun? And you know you're going to sit in a theatre and have a great time.
So you issue us with that guarantee?
I absolutely do, and unless you have no sense of humour whatsoever.
I think we have time for a third item.
We do. Very quickly, though, that one, Comedy About Spy, on at the Noel Coward until September. Highly recommended. I kind of wish we didn't have time. So then we come back onto another critic's darling that I really struggled with. This one's called An Oak Tree. And basically, it's Tim Crouch. It's his own show. It's having an anniversary. And he's back in it. Sort of one-man show. There he is. No, that's not him. He plays a sort of cod hypnotist on stage, and we're the audience, sort of. And then he brings up somebody onto the stage, and every night it's a planted celebrity actor in the audience.
Right.
So this is the big draw of it. You get everybody from sort of David Tennant to Mira Sayal to everyone. That person is going to play the father of a young girl that he killed when she walked out in front of his car. So not his fault, but he's still wrestling with it. He's falling apart. And then he mics up that actor. He feeds them lines through their ear. While talking to us, he prompts them on stage. He gives them clipboards of things to do. Some of it's comedy. Then it goes really dark into the death of a child and all this sort of thing and his own feelings. And his character is purposefully very awkward, but it's also sort of him. And at times when he's talking to the actor on stage, it's scripted, but it's them as themselves. It's supposed to be deconstructing theatre. And sort of avant-garde and all the rest. And I'm sure some people think that it is. It's only 80 minutes straight through without an interval, still far too long for me. And it even sort of, it acknowledges that it's very arch. He even says to the audience at one stage, oh, that's a little bit too arch, don't you think? Well, yes, I do. All the way through, I found it painful, I'm sorry to say. That one...
remember what, yes, where is it?
That one's on at the Young Vic for about another month. I'm sorry, I can't recommend that. Go and have a laugh at comedy about spies.
All very clear-cut. Thank you very much, Stephen. Lovely to see you. Coming up, in the 250th anniversary year since Jane Austen's birth, one tour company in Bath has experienced a 50% increase in bookings. Teresa McDermott will join me to discuss the Jane Austen appeal, why it's particularly high with lovesick Gen Zs. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, only on GB News.
Be nice to escape the grey.
Clear skies, here we come.
As clear as our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. Well, looking further afield, there's plenty of sunny spells across Europe, but also some thunderstorms breaking out with an area of low pressure. So across parts of Madeira, the Canary Islands, dry, fine, sunny spells. But we do have this area of low pressure, and across parts of Spain, northern Portugal, there will be some heavy and intense downpours, similar across parts of northeastern Europe as well. And that theme continues with sunny spells, but some showers too that could be heavy.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Today I'm joined by a nurse and an abuse survivor, Karen Danson. Now, when working at the County Durham and Darlington NHS Foundation Trust, she says that she had to beg her bosses not to let her male-born nurse, identifying as a woman, use their changing rooms, so the female changing rooms. Karen was abused by her father as a child, and this brought back traumas relating to years of abuse. Now, Karen and other Darlington nurses have launched a discrimination claim against their employees. This claim is still progressing, notwithstanding the recent Supreme Court judgment. Can you take us back a little bit to what happened to you as a child to give us an idea of why you were so nervous about this individual entering a female-only space?
Yep. So I was sexually abused by my dad when I was a child. It started when I was 6 years old, and it was like 3 times a week, every week for 6 years. It left me with PTSD. Like I say, here I am as an adult, as a nurse trying to give back to people, and I walk into work one day after shift, and there's a man in my changing room, you know, and I didn't know how to react. I thought I was in the wrong place. I thought I'd maybe walked into the wrong changing room. He's there half dressed. As I'm walking down to my locker, you know, he's saying to me, "Are you not getting changed yet?" And I was like, "No." And then he asked me again, and I started panicking, thinking, you know, why is he asking me if I want to get changed? Is he wanting to provoke a reaction? Does he actually want me to get changed in front of him? And then when he asked me a third time, "Are you not getting changed yet?" That was it. I needed to leave. I needed to get out of there. It just reminded me so much of the trauma that I'd experienced with my dad.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. The Pope's inaugural Mass is taking place in the Vatican City. An estimated audience of 200,000 people, and there are 150 international delegations. In a speech, the Pope has urged the rejection of hatred and division and disavowed an economic paradigm that exploits the Earth's resources and marginalises the poorest. The funeral is being attended by J.D. Vance, Vice President of the United States, by Volodymyr Zelensky. It'll be interesting to know whether those two have time for a tete-a-tete ahead of President Trump speaking to Vladimir Putin on the telephone tomorrow. If you want to keep up to date with all the latest on the Pope's inauguration Mass, you can scan the QR code on your screen or head to GBN2. This year is the 250th anniversary of Jane Austen's birth. The author is famed worldwide for her 6 novels, including Pride and Prejudice and Emma, and fans of Jane Austen are flocking to Bath this summer for tours and immersive experiences that transport them to Regency England. Strictly Jane Austen Tours has seen a 50% increase in bookings in the last 6 months, and their CEO, Teresa McDermott, joins me now. Teresa, welcome, and tell me why you think people are harking after Jane Austen at the moment.
I think because Jane Austen, she spent 5 years living here, so not that long, but I think it's because Bath being a planned Georgian city, you can actually walk the streetscape and you can visit the places where Jane Austen would have walked, where she would have visited friends and relatives, and you can see some of the locations where her books were set. So you don't really have to sort of kind of imagine, because Bath, it's all there, and you can very easily take yourself back in time.
But why? What is it about people's love lives today, do you think, that makes them hark to the way romance was in the days of Jane Austen?
I'm not sure whether that's strictly true, because it's a very different, our world is a very different world. Jane's books writes about young ladies looking for husbands, but their ages would have been around 16, 17. Their parents would have been starting to look around for marriage contracts from that age. So I think it's probably the films that have done more to kind of romanticize that world more than perhaps what's being said in the books. But I think I know when our guests are visiting Bath, and some of them bring their own costumes, they make their costumes, and others hire costumes. And I think for us in this day, it's the idea of being able to dress in the beautiful costumes, have your hair in ringlets, and be able to sort of walk the streets with your little parasol and just enjoy feeling that you're part of another world, even though our imagination of it isn't quite the same as the reality.
A delightful piece of escapism. I hope you enjoy it very much indeed, and I know that you'll give a very warm welcome to all those visitors in Bath. Thank you very much, Teresa McDermott. Thanks to all of my guests today. It's been a pleasure to return to the programme and to share your company. I'll be back at the same time next week. Appearing next on GB News today is The Weekend with Dawn Neeson. Dawn, can you tell us,
Thank you much, Mr. Portillo. Thank you, Mr. Portillo. Looking gorgeous as always. Cracking show. We've got a cracking show for you as well. Is Nigel Farage just a cult? Is Keir Starmer just a giant flip-flop? And how to turn your football shirt into your knickers. All of that coming up very soon after the weather. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be a brilliant show. See you soon.
There'll be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to a GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's been another slow start in places with low cloud. That'll gradually lift and break to reveal plenty of warm sunshine and then a few more showers developing on Monday. So taking a look at the bigger picture, we're still under the influence of this area of high pressure, still with some brisk winds though coming down from a northeasterly direction. So always cooler along that eastern coast. We'll have some lingering low cloud here, might be quite slow to break across East Midlands and the southeast of England too as we go through this afternoon. But otherwise further towards the west, plenty of lengthy warm sunshine, highs of up to 23, possibly 24 degrees across parts of western Scotland, but always cooler where you have that onshore flow across parts of Scotland and running down that eastern coast. So for much of Scotland, it remains dry as we head through this evening. Still some low cloud hugging some coast, but across the far southwest, that's where we could see a few showers just bubbling up that could be on the heavy side. Otherwise, elsewhere, plenty of fine and dry weather